Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the COVID-Safe Industry webinar on worksite requirements to sustain a COVID-safe environment for the construction industry. My name is Christina and I will be your host for this morning. With the need for extra vigilance during this period of COVID-19 heightened alert, this webinar has been put together particularly for builders and specialist contractors to address operational issues with regards to manpower, including transfer, increasing supply and keeping workforce safe, and to provide clarity on support measures and contractual issues, including eligibility, claims, process, and parties involved. Before we start, I would like to go through some webinar administrative matters. Please note that as participants, you are on mute setting. Should you have any questions about the presentation topics, you may post your questions by clicking the Q&A button on your screen to type in your queries. Do also note that when the session ends, you will be directed to access an evaluation form after you have exited the webinar. Once the form is submitted, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials via the website as shown. Shown on the screen here is an overview of today's program. To kickstart today's webinar, I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Faisal Ibrahim, Minister of State for Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of National Development, to deliver the opening address. Minister of State, please.
Thank you very much, colleagues and friends from the built environment sector. A very good morning. Thank you for making time to attend this webinar. I'm sure you must all be very busy adapting to the many challenges that COVID-19 has thrown at us. But I thought it'd be good for us to meet today. Firstly, to share with you the measures that we have taken and why. Secondly, to listen to your suggestions about what else we can do to get through this pandemic together. Last year, when COVID-19 spread through our workforce, we had to suspend construction work for many months. It was an extremely difficult time for everyone. The government had leaned forward to work closely with the sector and provided significant support to help companies with the cost of COVID-19. We rolled out a $1.36 billion construction support package. We provided regular swab tests for workers. Companies get some support for their manpower costs through the job support scheme and foreign worker levy waivers and rebates. And we roll out various other schemes to help companies with rental costs, loan financing, and other forms of assistance. At the same time, through the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act, or COTMA, we introduced legal mechanisms to enable companies affected by COVID-19 to get some protection. From August last year, we managed to bring the infections in the dorms and our construction workforce under control. It took tremendous effort. We had to roll out many new systems and processes in a very short time, and we had to keep making adjustments to keep up with the constant changes in the COVID situation. I thank you for your understanding and patience, and for continuing to work closely with us despite these difficulties. Today, because of our collective effort, we have managed to resume work on most of our construction projects. But we still face significant headwinds. First, our productivity has been affected by the safe management measures that we have put in place. But these measures remain critical to control COVID transmission and ensure the health of our workers. Now there is a risk of community transmission, bringing the virus into our construction workforce with serious implications for our sector. So we have to stay vigilant and work together to prevent this from happening. Second, our sector's productivity concerns have been exacerbated by a shortage of manpower. This manpower shortage has worsened because of the recent tightening of border controls, especially on workers recruited from South Asia. Again, these measures are important to protect the health of Singaporeans and our community, but it has taken a huge toll on the sector. Third, there have also been increases in construction material costs, especially steel bars. We have seen a significant increase in price since the beginning of last year, and the recent movement control order in Malaysia may impact our ability to bring in construction materials such as PPVC and precast supplies. Faced with these challenges, what are some of the moves that we have to make in response? Broadly, there are 4 things that we have embarked on. First, we have taken additional safe management measures to minimize the risk of COVID-19 spreading into our construction workforce again. Second, we need to share the burden of the increased manpower costs and to secure more workers for the construction sector. Third, we need to work together in good faith to share the other additional costs that COVID has imposed on the construction sector so that no one segment of the industry bears a disproportionate burden of the costs. And finally, accelerate our industry transformation efforts so that we can be more productive and manpower lean and move away from being overly reliant on foreign labor. First, on additional precaution that we need to take to reduce the risk of infection in the sector. Today, we do rostered routine testing, ART, for about 290,000 construction workers every 14 days. And we have vaccinated more than 45% of migrant workers in the construction sector with at least their first dose of vaccination. As the virus mutates to become more transmissible, we must respond by testing more widely and extensively. Since 18th of May, we now require all visitors to construction work sites to undergo ART, including those who live in the community. Vaccinated individuals must also undergo the same ART frequency of 7 or 14 days as unvaccinated individuals. The intent is to minimize the risk that the virus spreads from the community to the construction workforce and dormitories, and to enable early detection of infection that break through the vaccine protection. In addition, we are piloting a new testing protocol called Antigen Rapid Testing, or ART. ART is a lot faster, cheaper, and more comfortable than the usual PCR tests that we conduct during ART, which are the gold standard for COVID-19 testing. So we will be able to do ART once every 3 days, which will allow us to detect and isolate cases even earlier. But ART is less precise than PCR, and for now, we will use it on top of the PCR-ART regime. We have started the ART pilot at some work sites of public sector projects and we will expand this progressively to more projects, including private sector ones. I encourage WORKSITEs to take up the offer when invited by agencies to join the ART pilot. Beyond the enhanced testing regime, I hope that all of us will step up our safe management measures. For example, let's ensure that Trace Together is used when visitors visit WORKSITEs and allow only those who have been appropriately tested to enter. And take extra care to manage roving services like vending machine servicing at WORKSITEs. BCA colleagues will share more details later about the latest safe management measures, requirements, including the new ART pilots. Besides enhancing our safe management measures to reduce COVID transmission risks, we will also need to continue our efforts to address the ongoing manpower shortage in the sector, which has led to increased manpower costs. While the border measures are important to keep Singaporeans safe, we are keenly aware of the difficulties that they have caused to construction companies. The government has put in place some measures to help firms cope. We have increased the existing foreign worker levy rebates for work permit holders from $90 per worker per month to $250 per worker per month for the period of May to December 2021. And we have recently amended the law under COTMA, which will require project parties to fairly share the increase in foreign manpower costs due to COVID-19. BCA colleagues will give more details on this later on. But the fundamental issue is that the influx of workers remain very limited. So we are also actively working with the industry to find solutions to alleviate the shortage. First, we will temporarily allow new construction work permit holders from China to enter Singapore to work first and take their skill certification test here instead of taking it in China before coming over. Secondly, we are working with industry partners to explore ways to recruit more workers to make up for the serious shortfall that we now face without increasing the risk of importing the virus. Third, we have also worked with you to tackle the inappropriate poaching of workers by imposing a temporary quota on the number of transfers without consent. That said, I'd like to call on all of us to try our best to better retain the workers who are already in Singapore. If you have no need for any of your workers, but they would like to carry on working in Singapore, please put them on Scout's exchange rather than cancelling their work passes and sending them back. We should all do what we can to keep as many existing workers in Singapore as possible to support the overall ecosystem. We understand that some workers may be concerned about their families back home, but encourage them or give them some incentives to stay on during this pandemic. Point out gently that if they go home now, it may be hard for them to come back to work for a long time. There are also other cost increases that construction firms may have to deal with, such as increased costs or difficulties in bringing in construction materials. The government is stepping up to do our part where we can. We have given an additional 49 days extension of time for eligible public sector construction projects on top of the 4 months that was provided under COTMA last year. And for eligible public sector projects with an awarded contract sum of up to $100 million, we will give contractors 0.1% of the awarded contract sum for every month of delay to help them cope with non-manpower related costs incurred due to COVID delays. We have also removed the need for detailed substantiation for these claims to facilitate cash flow for the affected contractors. I hope that all of you can take the initiative to share the COVID-related cost increases fairly with your clients and subcontractors. None of us wanted COVID-19 to happen, but it has fallen on all of us, and we need to band together to get through it. Moving forward, we hope to facilitate some of this risk sharing more widely throughout the sector through new and standardized clauses in our construction procurement contracts. This will help to mitigate the impact of current and future pandemics. BCA colleagues will share more on our ideas on this front. Finally, the pandemic has highlighted how critical it is for us to accelerate our industry transformation so that we can reduce our over-reliance on foreign workers and make our sector much more resilient against similar future disruptions. We have been pursuing this in the last few years through our Construction Industry Transformation Map, or ITM, which should build on our progress so far and accelerate our transformation efforts. Firstly, for instance, we need to push for greater adoption of more productive construction methods, such as design for manufacturing and assembly, or DFMA. We should also make use of digital technologies like integrated digital delivery, or IDD, to integrate our work processes and enhance collaboration across the entire construction value chain. The government will provide strong support to help companies on this journey. There are many schemes that you can apply for to support your transformation efforts under the Build SG Transformation Fund. So I encourage you to get in touch with BCA's Build SG office, and our colleagues there will be more than happy to work with you to find the best way forward. Let me conclude. COVID-19 has been difficult for all of us. There remain significant challenges, including manpower shortages and increased costs. But as painful as this experience has been, it is also a valuable learning moment. As we make our way through the pandemic in close partnership, the government will journey with you so that together we can keep finding ways to make the sector stronger and more resilient now and in the future. My BCA and MOM colleagues will now share some details on the issues I've outlined earlier, and I look forward to hearing your views too. I hope that we will keep the conversation going through the other webinars we have planned for this year and beyond. And I want to sincerely thank all of you, as well as your staff and colleagues and all the stakeholders in partnering this journey with us. My sincere thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The first presentation is a joint presentation on the requirements for workers and worksite in a COVID-safe built environment operations issues. The presenters are Mr. Tan Yi Hong, Assistant Director, Assurance, Care and Engagement Group, MOM, and Mr. Wong Yong Xian, Executive Engineer, Audit and Inspection Group, BCA. Yi Hong and Yong Xian, over to you, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Yi Hong, and I'm from the Operations and Program Branch, Regional Command under the ACE Group, MOM. The theme that I'll be sharing with you today is about sustaining COVID-safe living environment in the dormitories. Now, learning from Phase 2 heightened alert, we believe that there is certainly a need to be more precautious to avoid COVID spread from the community into the construction workforce. To the worker, there's the living environment and the working environment. ACE role is in dormitory operations. I will therefore share how we sustain a COVID-safe living environment. Our BCA colleague Shi Ying will then talk about how we sustain a COVID-safe working environment. Next slide, please. Now, our overarching intent is to minimize disruption to work and also to minimize disruption to the employers. Our strategy is focused on prevention, and it has three components: safe living measures, infection prevention control, and vaccination. The whole idea of safe living measures as well as safe distancing measures is to prevent intermixing of migrant workers across floors and blocks. Some of the measures that we have put in place include access control measures such as barricades, exit gates, leave programming, etc., so as to minimize intermixing between blocks and levels. Assign use of communal areas in different batches, stagger pick-up and drop-off points for the migrant workers. Tighten control of dorm entry and exit, for example, only allow exits for work. Leverage technology like video cameras to ensure that there's no breaches of SLM, SDM measures, and to ensure a high level of compliance. Allow dorm operators to set in-house rules for enforcement and collect fines from the migrant workers within permitted limits for any such breaches. Next slide, please. Our next strategy is how we improve migrant workers' hygiene practices through infection prevention control, or IPC in short. In doing so, we have launched a framework to improve and standardize disease prevention measures across dormitories. We have come up with self-assessment checklists for dormitory operators who are required to conduct fortnightly checks for their self-assessment and also to take corrective actions. In turn, our MOM inspectors from the FAST teams will conduct regular IPC checks to ensure that the IPC measures are adhered to. Next slide, please. Next, we look at what are the areas covered in infection prevention control. Now, for personal protective equipment, PPE, we stipulate what are the PPE requirements based on risk categorization within different work groups and in different dorm settings. We also educate the dorm operators on the proper way of donning and doffing of PPE. Next, we reiterated to them the proper hand hygiene practices. This will include the 8 steps for hand washing, availability of hand sanitizers at high touch areas, and hand soap at appropriate areas. For general environment, we require the dormitory to have clear demarcation of red and green zones, as well as well-ventilated rooms. As for environmental cleaning, we emphasize on the cleaning and disinfecting of high touch areas, resident rooms, and suite and communal toilets. Last but not least, education. We engage the migrant workers or the dorm operators on good SLM, IPC practices. We also provide IPC educational posters for them in the dorms. Now, before I end my presentation, I would like to reiterate PM's test, trace, and vaccinate. Test. Send our workers for RRT and ART when it starts. Trace. Make sure our workers carry their TT tokens. Replace spoiled ones so that we can do contact tracing accurately and efficiently and minimize disruption to work. Vaccinate. Encourage our workers to vaccinate themselves. In May, Minister Tan See Leng shared that we have vaccinated 42,000 workers, which is about 13% of the dorm population. Construction makes up the vast majority of our dorm residents, which also made up 75% of the no-shows, and that translates to approximately 13,000 workers. We would like to reiterate the importance for employers to send their workers for vaccination. While we understand that it may be disruptive, but COVID is even more disruptive to employers, and that is what we want to avoid. For the no-shows, we have taken the liberty to reschedule the workers, and once employers receive the notification, they can reschedule their workers again. We would like to appeal for the employers to render their fullest cooperation and support in this matter. My sharing will end here. I will now hand over to Yong Xian. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. Now and hi everyone. I'll bring you through the requirements of workers and worksite operation. This slide shows the content of my presentation. Mainly, we'll be going through the current situation of the COVID-19 in our industry, the key enablers for prevention and containment of COVID-19, and also reduce disruption of work with the use of technology. The construction industry has made great strides in properly implementing SMM at worksite and keeping the number of COVID-19 cases in the construction sector low. However, we are seeing an increase in the local COVID-19 cases and new cases in the dormitories, alongside emerging threats of new COVID variants, putting emphasis on the need for all work sites to heighten its vigilance and maintain its discipline in adhering to SMM requirements, so as to maintain the low C+ incident rate at worksite and protect the workforce. The key to maintain low C+ incident rate at worksite and protect the workforce is through prevention and containment at worksite. The enablers to prevent COVID outbreak are having a safe access control, implementing and adhering to effective SMM, undergoing roster routine tests, and implementing additional measures for high-risk areas. Once the COVID positive case occurs at site, containment enablers such as the issuance of the safety timeout STO and reviewing of SMM plan helps to ensure the C+ infection does not spread beyond affected work zones. I'll elaborate more on these key enablers in my following slides. The first line of defense at the worksite in preventing a COVID outbreak has to be the robust access control. Okay. We would like to highlight this robust access control because recently there has been a lot of feedback on this matter. Okay, worksite must implement trace together only safe entry at their entrance and use it to check in all personnel and workers entering the worksite. Safe entry check-in at all sites must be carried out with the TT app or TT Blue Pass token via the Safe Entry Business app on a device installed at the site, for example, a mobile device or a scanner. Okay, this can be done by tapping the TT app or the TT BP token against the device installed at the site as shown as option 1 on the slide. Scanning your TT or BP token QR code as shown as option number 2. Okay, both SC check-in methods should be allowed at the worksite, and builders should communicate with their workers and subcontractors to inform them of this and not to make an issue at the entrance and exit point, which may result in delaying of the check-in and causing overcrowding at the entrance. Other modes of safe entry in the construction are not allowed and have been discontinued. Worksite must avoid displaying safe entry QR code at entrance as these can mislead people. Okay. As shown on the screen, builder must only allow green access code status into their worksite. Allow me to reiterate some points that I just mentioned, as this is very important. Worksite must implement trace together only safe entry at the entrance and use it to check in all personnel and workers entering the worksite. Safe entry QR code must not be used for check-in and only allow people who do not exhibit symptoms of COVID-19 and workers with green access status into their worksite. Next, we have the roster routine test, RRT. As mentioned by Minister, this is another key safeguard as he identifies people with COVID infection. Therefore, employers play a very important role to ensure that all their employees undergo the mandatory RRT. During check-ins, worksite must verify the RRT status of all personnel before allowing them to enter and to record their swab test result. Worksites can verify the personnel and workers' RRT status through Health Hub app for SCPR, SG WorkPass, or FWMOM Care for WorkPass holder. WorkSite must deny entry to anyone who does not meet the mandatory RRT requirement. Within the WorkSite, good and effective SMM must be implemented and practiced to mitigate the risk of any COVID outbreak. So such SMM includes making sure that worker in the same team has 1 meter safe distancing, workers of different team has 2 meter safe distancing, grouping and segregation of the workers into teams by accommodation, trade, and the type of activity to prevent intermixing. Providing and ensuring visual identifiers are given and worn to differentiate the different teams. Importantly, ensuring all workers and personnel at site wear their masks properly. BCA has also published the infographics on our website for builders to download and paste it on their work site so as to remind everyone to practice good SMM. Here are some photos to share of good practices, and this includes safe entry, check-in using trace together only safe entry, daily toolbox meeting by builder to remind workers of SMM, providing unique visual identifiers to visitor and escorting the visitor by SDO on site, implementing centralized data platform that enables search extraction and management of information by the builders more easily. Since the phase 2 heightened alert, BCA has conducted checks over 1,200 worksites and taken enforcement actions against more than 65 builders for SMM non-compliance. This includes 2 sites which had let in COVID positive workers, thus exposing the rest of the workforce to the risk of COVID-19 transmission. BCA will heighten our enforcement stance against builders for non-compliance with COVID-19 laws. As such, issuance of longer SWO, stop work order, composite fine up to $2,000, or prosecution of the builder. Here are some photos of the non-compliance found at worksite during the inspection. No separation at common facilities, workers not wearing masks, having red access code workers on site, unclear or no demarcation of work zones, no safe distancing between workers, and mixing of workers from different teams in common amenities. Next, I would like to bring the focus to a few groups of stakeholders which pose a higher risk of spreading the COVID-19, such as the roving subcontractors, visitors, and delivery personnel. These stakeholders are generally at worksite for a shorter period of time and rove between multiple sites. To mitigate this risk, worksites should adopt additional measures for this group of people when they are at site. Some of these measures are carry out their site visits and tasks outside the work hours of the main workforce when possible, providing these roving subcontractor workers and visitors with unique visual identifiers when they are at site, maintaining at least 2 meters from other segregated teams of workers on site, ensure close monitoring by SMO, SDO, having separate amenities for them to use, and briefing on the enhanced SMM to reinforce their responsibility. Further to that, there's a group of personnel such as the delivery personnel. Some of the SMM should include getting delivery personnel to stay within the vehicle or cabin when they are at site and communicate through digital devices. Try to schedule these deliveries in a staggered manner, keeping records of the deliveries, adopting contactless delivery and e-invoicing, having loading and unloading done by the on-site worker rather than the delivery man or delivery personnel. For worksite with cross-border delivery, we would like to inform all that they must check the cross-border personnel that they are wearing the colored wristband prior to allowing them into the worksite. These wristbands are issued at a checkpoint to the cross-border personnel after they completed their ART and been tested negative. Builders are strongly encouraged to defer all non-essential services such as vending machine servicing and non-urgent inspection at worksite. QP should also review the site supervision requirements for their projects and consider deploying remote site supervision for building works where suitable. All these measures will help to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 at worksite. To date, BCA has published a number of circulars that we'd like to share with you to remind the industry on the SMM management and compliance. Kindly go to the BCA webpage to download them for detailed reference. BCA has consistently shared with the industry through webinars, SMO briefing of the best practice from construction projects on SMM at worksite. The upcoming ones are later today. There will be one tomorrow, and more dates will be announced soon. Allow me to bring you through the C+ containment at worksite and dormitory. Okay, so the industry can better understand how the flow goes. Okay, MOM, MOH, and BCA work very closely together and have an established protocol. Okay, so when there's a C+ worker is confirmed at site, BCA will within 24 hours issue a safety timeout notice for all works on site to cease. The main objective of this STO is to stem any possibility of outbreak on site due to the working C+. The STO allows identification of the work zones where C+ workers and close contact operate, as well as investigate breaches in SMM. If there's any shortcoming in the SMM, stop work order will be issued to the work zones. SWO will be lifted after the builder has rectified the SMM shortcomings. The STO can be lifted within 3 days if the builder is able to respond to BCA promptly with an adequate and updated SMM and worksite safety plan. Builders are strongly encouraged to deploy additional safe entry check-ins at zonal levels. So this will help to facilitate the issuance of partial STO instead of a full STO to reduce the extent of work destruction. Lastly, let me briefly cover some of the technology enablers that can help worksite SMM efforts. Firstly, builder can consider adopting site management platform. These are data management systems to help builders capture workers' information such as identity matched with health status, and automatically helping to flag out workers that do not meet the criteria. Such systems may also come with other analytical sensors, such as the AI camera to help monitor safe distancing. Some builders have already implemented versions of such systems for their projects. This COVID Safe platform, or the CSP, is one of such platforms developed by BCA together with our developer. More info is available at this link and to sign up. I would like to conclude my presentation with the following pointers that we have highlighted earlier. Recent events have emphasized the need for all worksites to remain extra vigilant to keep our construction sector COVID safe. We seek the cooperation of the industry to ensure strict compliance with SMM, keep tighter controls on the worksite to minimize the risk of COVID-19 transmission, which can disrupt your work progress. Some of the key areas to ensure minimal work disruption at the worksite: deny rate access code workers from entering worksite, implementing trace together safe entry check-in only and use it properly, make sure employees undergo RRT, ensuring all personnel and workers adhere to SMM, adopting additional SMM for roving subcontractors and delivery personnel, and daily monitoring of personnel and workers' health status, and to get them to see doctor immediately if they are unwell. We want to remind BCA takes very serious view of the SMM non-compliance and will not hesitate to enforce against builder, as non-compliance can undermine the effort and good work of the rest of the construction industry in combating the COVID-19 spread. As advised by MOH, vaccination remains a key enabler to reduce the risk of community transmission. And we would encourage all to be vaccinated when it offers to you and your employees. Let's work together and keep our worksite safe together. Thank you.
Thank you, Yi Hong and Yong Xian. Next, we are pleased to have Ms. Ong Shui Ying, Senior Manager, Manpower Strategy and Planning Group, BCA, to share on the Antigen Rapid Test, or ART, implementation at construction work sites. Shui Ying, over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'll be sharing with you on implementing antigen rapid tests at construction work sites. So this is the outline of my presentation today, covering ART requirements, preparation and implementation steps to participate in the pilot, and an overview of how positive or retested antigen cases should be managed. The construction, marine, and process sectors had earlier stepped up its safe management measures, including the requirements for rusted routine testing as a surveillance tool to identify, isolate, and contain spread at work sites. Since the start of the phase 2 heightened alert, we have reverted the RRT regime to a frequency of 7 or 14 days, and this applies to anyone entering the construction work sites and supply works premises, regardless of their vaccination status. To further reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission into or within work sites, BCA, MOM, and MOH are working with selected work sites and supply works premises to pilot the implementation of the antigen rapid testing. This is to screen personnel before they enter the work sites and serves as an additional layer of risk mitigation measures. So should we implement ART at work sites now? So actually, with the evolving COVID-19 situation, construction work sites should be better prepared. We encourage developers and contractors to join us in this pilot ART implementation, given that work sites will be given ART test kits to implement, and ART supervisory training are actually being heavily subsidized now. BCA has engaged and is working with the selected work sites and supply works premises in the construction sector to implement the ART. So this requirement applies to personnel who are not residing in dormitories. This includes Singaporeans, PRs, and migrant workers residing in HDB and private residential properties. The ART frequency is broadly once every 3 days, depending on their vaccination status, and this is on top of their existing RRT regime. Before entering work sites, relevant personnel will have to administer the ART test kits through self-swabs under supervision. So to date, we have more than 100 work sites which are already in the process of implementing ART, and more than 30 have already started operation. We are in the process to onboard more work sites and supply works premises. The photos in this slide shows examples of how workers are administering supervised self-swab at the ART stations of the work sites. Here is an overview of the preparation and processes to note before you apply to pilot ART at your work sites. So in JIS, contractors will need to enroll your personnel to attend the ART supervisory training course, plan for site layout, set up your work site, and plan and order ART test kits from BCA. So once the above are ready, contractors can proceed to prepare your nominal roles for ART attendance on site on a day-to-day basis prior to the actual ART implementation. I will go through in details in the subsequent slides. Firstly, to prepare for supervised self-swab operations on site or your supply work premises, a number of supervisors should be enrolled for training to be ART supervisors. On this, BCA has actually rolled out training course to train ART swab supervisors. Companies can enroll staff for training ahead of your ART implementation at work sites. Next, you will need to select a suitable location to set up the ART station. Self-swap instruction guides in different languages will be provided for display at the ART station. Your selection of ART station should allow fresh air ventilation. This could be outdoor spaces and fields with tentages and raised platforms to cater for wet weather. Although less ideal, indoor function spaces or canteens may be used. However, you should note that the venue must allow as much fresh air ventilation as possible. With regards to the site layout, contractor will need to plan and ensure the sequential flow of the swabbing process. We also suggest that work sites to have 2 queues at the site to facilitate faster entry to site, one for those taking ART and those who can enter site without taking ART for that particular day. An example of the generic site layout has been provided by MOH to provide guidelines in how ART station could be set up. So contractors should note that you should cater and plan for the individual's entry point, registration area, swabbing zone with tables placed 2 meters apart, disposal and decontamination stations, as well as the exit point. To ensure proper infection prevention controls, a checklist actually will be provided to contractor to check the following 7 areas that to confirm that it has been complied to standards stated within. So this includes the registration area, sample activity and testing area, holding area, the process of conveyance of ART positive cases, PPE and hygiene standards, the upkeep of environmental cleanliness, and the disposal of waste materials. If disposed as general waste, work sites will have to ensure that the waste must be double bagged and cable tied before sending for incineration. To draw the ART test kits, contractors should estimate the number of non-dorm dwellers entering sites per day and make arrangements to order 4 working days in advance from the expected delivery date. Contractors can order via a Form SG link that will be provided to you at the end of the presentation item. So this is an overview of the typical self-swap journey at construction sites. The entire journey should take about 10 to 15 minutes from arrival to registration and administering of ART self-swap. Once confirmed with an ART negative result, personnel will be allowed to enter the worksite. The ART supervisor or main point of contact should upload the test results on swap registration system, SRS in short, immediately after completion of tests of the day. So a HPB user guide will actually be provided to guide employers on the steps to take to upload the test results. Here's an workflow on how to manage the different type of test results. When a worker is tested ART negative, of course, he can just proceed to enter the worksite to work. But in the case of an ART invalid case, the worker can take 1 more retest. However, 2 invalid results will be treated as an ART positive case. ART positive case will be required to take a confirmatory PCR test. I will elaborate more in my subsequent slides. So should an ART positive or worker with consecutive 2 invalid results be detected, the individual should be isolated at site and his or her employer should be informed. The main point of contact, the ART supervisor or the employer, should ensure that all the ART positive individuals go for a confirmatory PCR swab and inform BCA if any of the positive case has been detected. This can be done through a Form SG link that will be provided to the contractors. As main point of contact, supervisor or the employer on site, you will be required to have sight over the test results of such cases, issue a MOH ART test memo to the individual that has been tested positive, inform the worker of his or her legal requirement to go for a confirmatory PCR test, and last but not least, issue him or her a referral note to take to the PHPC clinic to do the PCR test. So in terms of conveyance, such individuals should travel via private transport, which means car or taxi, with the windows wound down with air conditioning switched off. In addition, workers should wear a surgical mask and sit alone in the back seat on the other side from the driver. Seats should be wiped down at the end of the trip. So the following list of private transport service providers will be available for booking. So the transport cost will actually have to be borne by the employer or the worker. So just to summarize on what to do to prepare for ART implementation, main contractor or work sites can take the following 3 steps concurrently. Provide the necessary worksite info to plan and order the test kits to BCA via a Form SG registration form. Enroll your supervisors for ART training, and start to plan and set up the worksite for ART operations. Participants will be able to access the URLs when we send you the link to access and download the presentation materials after today's webinar. So yeah, with that, I have come to the end of my presentation today. I will now hand over the time back to the MC.
Thank you, Shane. The next presentation is by Ms. Lee Hui Xian, Senior Manager, Business Development Group, BCA, who will be sharing on the technical details for the support measures for the BE sector. Let us welcome Hui Xian.
Hi, good morning. I'll be sharing the support measures specifically provided to our sector to cushion some of the impact brought by COVID-19. Sorry, I'll give the slides a few seconds to load. Okay. I'll first give some background on the challenges faced by the different stakeholders due to the current pandemic before going to the 4 areas of the support measures. For the benefit of those who did not attend the previous webinars, I will briefly go through the key support measures, and I will focus on addressing some of the common queries on the claim process for the contractual reliefs. Lastly, I will also share our initiative to effect more equitable risk sharing in new construction tenders going forward. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the progress of construction projects. Given the interconnected nature of our BE sector, the delay in construction contracts has impacted all the stakeholders along the value chain, from developers to consultants to contractors, and even to the home buyers. And because of this interconnected nature, no single stakeholder in this value chain should bear a disproportionate burden brought by COVID-19. We have therefore intervened significantly last year to assist the many stakeholders across the value chain by providing direct support and facilitating more equal sharing of burden along the value chain. Okay. We have categorized the support measures for BE sector into 4 areas. Each area addresses a different challenge faced by the industry. The first category is a transitional relief to help BE firms cope with the additional costs associated with COVID-safe restart criteria, which were not priced in construction contracts that were entered before the COVID outbreak. Such costs include provision of PPEs for workers, provision of temporary screening facilities, contact tracing systems, and so on. Further relief are provided for the appointment for SMOs and sending construction workers for rostered routine testing, or RRT in short. Because of the disruption to construction activities, revenue has either reduced or delayed, and this has impacted the cash flow for many firms. Hence, the government established several loan schemes to help firms ease their cash flow. I will not go through in details here, since we have already covered this in earlier webinars. For more details on the loan schemes, can visit Enterprise SG's website or also check in with the participating banks directly. Third is on the manpower-related issues brought by COVID. To release some of the firm's burden from manpower costs and help firms retain their local employees, we assisted firms with FWL rebate and waivers, as well as wage subsidies through JSS since April last year. One point to note is that construction sector is receiving more support compared to most of the other sectors. On the manpower shortage front, we have also introduced time-limited flexibility to recruit PRC workers without having to enroll in overseas testing centers for skills certification. Work is also in progress on ways to resume inflow of construction work permit holders, or WPH in short, in a safe manner, and also to improve the workers' retention. More recently, we have seen an increase in foreign manpower costs as projects picked up their paces since October last year. The new bill was passed in Parliament recently on the 11th of May to address this. I will share more in the next category. The last group of support measures are contractual reliefs. This is important as contractors are obliged to deliver projects according to the timeline and price under the contract, which is actually agreed before COVID took place. As COVID continued to unfold, contractors face immense pressure as they can no longer meet the original timeline and price. It is not conventional for the government to step in and intervene in existing contract agreements between parties, but in order to preserve the capability and capacity of the BE sector, urgent and unprecedented contractual reliefs were formulated. We have established legislated standards through the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act, or COTMA in short, on the legal actions against non-performance, universal EOT, as well as cost sharing. As many of the contractors are also involved in public sector contracts, further measures were also introduced to help facilitate the claim process and provide further reliefs to help the BE firms. I will share this in detail. COTMA was first enacted in April last year to offer temporary relief to businesses and individuals who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The overarching principle is to ensure that no single stakeholder bears an undue share of burden imposed by COVID-19. We have received a fair amount of inquiries asking whether COVID-19 applies to private sector contracts. To answer this question, COTMA is actually a legislation, meaning it covers all eligible contracts in both public and private sector. It also includes eligible subcontracts. We want to stress the importance of Part 2. It provides protection to firms against their contract liabilities due to inability to perform or to meet contractual obligations because of COVID. Such events may include original delivery deadline, which has become unrealistic. Part 2 covers construction and supply contracts entered into before 25th of March 2020, and the relief period is between 1st February 2020 until the end of the prescribed period, which is currently extended to 30th of September this year. To be protected under Part 2, the contractor must serve a notification for relief, or NFR in short. We understand that our industry is built on good long-term working relationship, and there are concerns that serving an NFR could ruin efforts spent on building up the current working relationships. This is actually not the intent for Part 2. Part 2 is more to serve as a defense against claim for breach of contract, damages, or to disregard any LDs payable due to the delays sustained during the relief period. It also disallows other party to call on performance bond or to continue or to start court or insolvency proceedings. We hope that contract parties can take this opportunity to reorganize your businesses and also take the chance to discuss the existing contract terms and deadlines with the other party. This slide is to show an overview of more legislative reliefs under COTMA, which are relevant to the construction value chain. As mentioned earlier, the underlying principle is to ensure that no single stakeholder bears a disproportionate burden imposed by COVID-19. I will go through in detail what each part covers. Part 8A provides automatic EOT of 122 days for delay between 7th of April to 6th of August 2020. This means that no application is required from the contractor. Contractors that need longer EOT can continue to submit their applications with necessary substantiation to the client for evaluation. After works has started to resume in August last year, site progress have not gone back to 100%. This is due to the SMMs and the COVID safe measures put in place. And it's no fault of the contractor or client. But indeed, we understand that contractors need more time to complete their projects. While the sector allocated their resources on resumption of site activities, there were concerns on how to evaluate the additional time in view of the slower pace of the works. Hence, we brought together some professional associations, or TACs in short, and government procuring entities, GPs in short, together to discuss and agree on some of the common methods that can be adopted for public sector projects. So in addition to 122 days under Part 8A relief, GPs provided another 49-day common EOT for the delay between 7th of August to the 31st of December 2020. This is actually derived from an industry-wide progress payment. For private sector, it's actually quite encouraging to see that some of the developers had also leaned forward to help the contractors by extending the time for completion. We urge the private sector developers to also consider adopting the same approach, which actually helps both to simplify the EOT claim process for both parties. I'll give some examples for the public sector approach. In a scenario where works were substantially completed before end of the month, the EOT to be granted will be prorated accordingly. In this example, since the works were completed in mid of October, the GPs will prorate and grant 32 days of EOT. 32 days is actually derived from adding up 14 days in August, 14 days in September, as well as another 4 days in October. As mentioned earlier, 49 days EOT was calculated based on industry level progress payment, and it sets the minimum EOT to be granted by GPEs. While it's a broad-based approach, it aims to reduce the administrative burden on both parties. For example, the contractor will need to collate, under the normal process, the contractor will need to collate and submit substantiating documents and send it to the GPE, and then on the GPE's end, they will also need to evaluate. So in a scenario where a contractor wishes to claim more than 49 days EOT for the same period, he can continue to submit his justifications to the GPE for evaluation. The justification could include comparison of planned and actual activity between on the program in the project's critical path. If the contractor is unable to justify, don't worry, he will not be penalized. He will still get the minimum 49-day EOT. I'd like to add a caveat that where there are strong justifications, GPE have a flexibility to reduce or not grant the common EOT. For example, the project is still in design stage and it's not there's no works on site, hence it's not affected. Next on COGMA Part 8B, 8B actually entitles all the eligible construction contracts, including subcontracts, to claim for half of the non-manpower related costs which were incurred due to the delays caused by COVID-19. The co-sharing under Part 8B is up to 0.2% per month of delay and with a total cap of 1.8% of the contract sum. Subcontractors can similarly put up their qualifying costs incurred to their main contractors under Part 8B. One point to note is that these claims are actually enforceable under the Security of Payment Act. To simplify the claim process and facilitate the disbursement of claim under Part 8B, public sector actually developed these approaches on the slides here. These measures were actually discussed and agreed with major GPEs, as well as Singapore Contractors Association Limited, SCAL in short, and other TACs such as SIA and SISV. Notwithstanding that these measures are adopted by government agencies for public sector contracts, the same methodologies can also be adopted for private sector contracts. As these approaches greatly help to reduce the administrative burden on both parties, we urge private sector contract parties to discuss and also consider adopting the same. The other approach to simplify claims for Part 8B is to pay contractors a flat 0.1% for each month of delay. So under this approach, GPs will first calculate the co-sharing amount with this formula. And using a 100 million contract for illustration, the GP will calculate the co-sharing amount based on the EOT granted for the month and sum up for the period. So for the purpose of calculating this 0.1% support, we also received some inquiry on what does the awarded contract sum consist of. So the intent is for the contract sum. The contract sum should be the lump sum set out in the LOA for the base works. If it's a D&B contract, it will include the design fees that are part of the awarded contract sum. And it should also include provisional sums and also options that have been exercised as at the date of the claim. Contingency sum will be excluded. So back to this example, after the GPE calculates the co-sharing amount, he will then proceed to inform the contractor the total amount payable is 399K. So the contractor, if he agrees with the computation, he can then put in this 399K in his payment claim, in his next payment claim. So note that this amount should deduct any previous payment made under COGMA Part 8B, if any. Similar to other contractual claims, contractors are required to submit their claims for the cost sharing under Part 8B when putting out their monthly payment progress claim. To facilitate this process, we encourage contractors to use the template which was developed with Scale, and this template can be downloaded from the link or the QR code provided in this slide. For consultancy services, we have informed GPEs on 5th of May to make a one-off payment to consultants for the additional scope taken on due to COVID-19. To ease administration, there is no need for consultants to put out any claims. GPEs will calculate the amount based on the minimum quantum for the 3 components as shown in the table here. And these figures were actually calculated in consultation with GPs based on the time spent on each item and the typical hourly rates charged by consultants. For a 100 mil contract, where the architect charges about 2 million fees, for example, the architect will receive a total of 11.25K for all 3 components. This equates to about 0.56% of their fee. And for component A, since all the advance payment claims has been provided to contractor last year, payment can be made through the next immediate payment response to the consultant. We understand that GPs have already started to pay consultants since the issuance of our circular in early May. To ensure that the payment reaches the consultants quickly, we have further break down component B to 2 tranches. Tranche 1, 50% will be paid once the prolongation cost or PC claim for the period between 7th of April to 6th of August is certified. Tranche 2, 50% will be paid once one of the PC claim for the period after 7th August is evaluated. For component C, payment will be released once the COVID-related EOT for period after 1st of January 2021 is granted. Again, private sector can similarly adopt the same, and this will help to alleviate the consultant's cash flow timely. For the developers, COGMA Part 8C allows developers whose projects face construction delays to seek relief on the date of delivery of possession. In addition to Part 8C release, a 12-month extension of PCP as well as ABSD remission timelines for completion were also introduced. This will account for the delays brought by COVID-19. For COGMA Part 10A, in terms of scope, it will apply to the contracts for construction works. These contracts are of longer duration that generally involve structural works and most likely affected by the foreign manpower crunch. This includes subcontracts in both public and private sector. Second, it will apply to construction contracts entered into before the 1st of October, as parties may not have fully priced in the foreign manpower cost increases before this date. Another reason is that substantial FWL waivers and rebates were already provided by the government up to that point. The purpose of the adjustment is to take into account the increasing foreign manpower costs of WPH or work permit holders due to COVID-19. The relief is for foreign manpower cost increase incurred by the contractor between the period from 1st October 2020 to 30th September 2021, or any extended date as may be prescribed This state will tie in with the endpoints of the relief for Part 2 and 8B of COTMA. Next on the mechanism, I will share more in the flow chart in the next slide. Okay, we encourage all stakeholders affected by the pandemic to negotiate with each other in good faith to adjust the contract sum, taking into consideration the increased manpower costs. If the negotiation is successful, there is no need to tap on Part 10A. Parties can proceed to adjust the contract sum accordingly. But if negotiations fell through, contractors can seek determination from the assessor to adjust the construction contract sum. The assessor will first check the contract's eligibility and proof of reasonable attempt to negotiate before proceeding to consider methods and principles in arriving in a just and equitable decision. For example, the assessor will take into account all facts and including the loss suffered or any benefit obtained by any contractual party, such as the FWL rebates. Please note that Part 10A has not commenced. We are working on the subsidiary legislation, which will include the details of this process and will be announced soon. I'll now briefly share our thoughts on the new construction tenders going forward. Learning from the current pandemic, stakeholders are worried about unanticipated risks and cost increases due to the unexpected developments during the pandemic. Hence, to ensure long-term business viability of the industry for future contracts affected by COVID, it is in the interest of all stakeholders to have more equitable risk allocation in standard contract forms. Everyone along the value chain will need to step up and share the burden of uncertainty and help one another through these challenging times together. In January 2021, a work group comprising various stakeholders was actually convened to study ways to enhance our construction contracts, both in public and private sector, to enable more equitable risk and cost sharing during the pandemic event, and also crisis of this nature. These are some of the ideas that are being deliberated by the work group. For the contractors, developer can provide provisional sum for known unknown costs, such as the swab tests that are anticipated. The commonly adopted standard contract forms, such as PSS, COC, REDUS, and SIA, can also include grounds to entitle contractors to claim for EOT and additional costs arising from pandemic events. For consultants, developers can provide more interim payment milestones to help to facilitate the consultant's cash flow. Standard consultancy contract can similarly include provisions for additional costs for project delays due to pandemic. Developers can also provide provisional sums for the known unknown costs. In summary, this mechanism should provide more risk certainty even in uncertain times. This is the end of my presentation. I will now hand back to the MC, Christina, please.
Thank you, Hui Xian. We have now come to the panel dialogue. It will be chaired by Mr. Darren Lim, Group Director, Audit and Inspection Group, BCA. Also joining us this morning in the panel are Mr. Ng Yek Meng, President, Singapore Contractors Association Limited, Mr. Nelson T, Honorary President, Specialist Trade Alliance of Singapore, Engineer Punithan, son of Shanmugam, Director, Building Certification and Ops Planning Department, Audit and Inspection Group, BCA, Mr. Ng Man Hon, Director, Procurement Policies Department, Business Development Group, BCA, Mr. Aaron Xiao, Director, Strategic Resources Department, Business Development Group, BCA, and Ms. Tanley Tuan, Director, Manpower Development Department, Manpower Strategy and Planning Group, BCA. I will now hand over the time to the moderator. Darren, over to you, please.
Thank you, Christina. I'd like to thank our panelists again for joining us this afternoon to take some questions, particularly Yek Ming from SCAL and Nelson from STARS. So as you all know, the industry has been making a lot of efforts to try to manage this COVID-19 situation for the past year. And we have been enhancing the requirements over progressively over the year, as well as recently in the past couple of weeks. So I would like to direct a question to both Scale and STARS. How have STARS and Scale been helping your members in overcoming the challenges this past year? Maybe Yik-Ming, you would like to start first?
Hi. I think as everyone knows, for the past 14 months, COVID-19 has hit the construction industry very, very hard. When the COVID hit our construction industry in April last year, Scale immediately set up a back to work task force to help the industry to come up measure how to restart our work safely. Our task force has regular meeting with BCA, MOM, and also minister on a weekly basis during April to August. So with the ground feedback from us, BCA and also the government agency have rolled out a series of measures to help the industry, as highlighted by Wei Xian just now. So with the help, I think the industry is still suffering a very painful period, but at least most of the company survived through this period. Over the past 1 month or so, actually, we are also very concerned that the second wave of the COVID from the community may spread to our work site and also our dormitory. Scale have sent out quite a few circular to remind our members to stay vigilant, so that I think we bubble wrap our workers from the communities. So right now, I think the most challenging task for the industry or for the builders is to how to get back our labor. Right now, I think we are facing a very acute labor shortage situations. Wages has been rising very fast. Poaching activities is also very high, and also coupled with rising material costs, a lot of construction firms is facing financial hardship. For Scale, we are trying to help to retain as many workers as possible in the industry. As mentioned by Minister just now, I think we have this SCMX, Manpower Exchange. It's an online portal. The original purpose for this exchange was to place out displaced workers. That means those workers who do not have any company, but they still want to work in Singapore. We'll place this worker out to our members. Over the past few months, SCMX has acted as a mediator between employers and also the workers to renegotiate their wage increase especially during the no consent period. Based on our record, we managed to retain about 50% of the cases back to the original employer. So in the shorter term, Scale has also going to roll out one pilot project to bring back workers from India. Probably we'll start it late this month, and hopefully we can bring in the first few batches of workers safely to Singapore. We are setting up this quarantine center at the source country in Chennai. On the longer term basis, we are working very closely with BCA to roll out more sustainable building construction processes. We are working on right from the design stage. We want to have more buildable design and also better constructability, so that we can have a leaner workforce. We don't want to over-reliant on the big number of construction workers. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Yik-Ming. So it's heartened to hear that Scale has been helping the industry to manage some of these manpower problems going forward. So if you need more information, I suggest all the attendees can check out Scale's website for more information on some of these initiatives. Nelson, how about for STARS? Would you like to share?
Thank you, Darren. Okay, our secretary team has been engaging with our members on a daily basis. Okay, we share update on the latest information, especially on advisories issued by MOM BCA, so that everybody everyone is known of the latest happenings on in the BE sector. Okay, we also try to address issue on the labor shortage. Of course, there's no immediate solution for this because borders are closed, but we are working very hard on that, how to share workforce among members, and at the same time also tackle the issue of building material shortage lately, especially the Malaysia MCO, which caused a lot of delay in the delivery of building materials to Singapore. We also share good practices by the members, okay? But all in all, I think we have said quite a lot. We also remind each and every one of us, okay, to implement SMM at work sites, follow proper procedures. Disruption and low productivities on work sites is inevitable, but it is only we minimize the risk of COVID-19 transmission on work sites, then we can keep our construction activities going. Thank you.
Thanks, Nelson.
Yeah.
Let's take some questions from the Q&A. Let's look at the questions here. There's a burning question on the use of Blue Pass and collection of TT tokens for workers. So for this topic, I would like to call on our MOM colleague, Mr. Tan, to share with us how should the companies go about to replace the Blue Pass tokens and for their workers to collect the TT tokens. Yihong, are you there?
Yeah. Okay, understand there are some question on TT tokens collection. Okay, so for those workers who basically they stay in FIDA dorms, when I say FIDA dorms, basically they are referring to those premises that houses more than 1,000 workers and they are regulated under FIDA, right? So please advise them, these workers, okay, to approach the dorm operators who will link up with the MOM task team on the ground regarding the TT collection and replacement. Okay, so for those staying in FIDA dorms, please inform them, approach the dorm operators, and thereafter, the MOM fast team will basically look into all the TT collection and replacement for these workers. Now, for those not in FIDA dorms, previously we told them to get the tokens in the RCs, okay, but due to the recent phase 2 heightened alert, they are not open now. But nevertheless, once they are open, they may collect at Sunli, Terusan, and Kranji. Okay, so in the interim, we encourage them to use the TT apps, right? Yeah, so I hope that I've answered the question for that, right? Thank you.
Thanks, Yihong. We'll capture this answer as one of the Q&As which we will distribute after the webinar. Okay, the other burning question that I see from the questions asked is on RRT. So can I direct this question to Lei Tuan from BCA? How can employers enroll on RRT or enroll their workers on RRT? And exactly who needs to do RRT before they enter the worksite?
Okay, thanks, Darren. RRT is a requirement for all workers who are entering the worksite. Basically, it's a gold standard for ensuring that our worksite stay COVID safe. So they have to do it once every 14 days. Companies who have yet to have a SRS account can go to our website or HPB website to look for the link to open an SRS account. Once you have an SRS account, you will find that if you are construction work pass holders employer, you will see all the things in there and you will be able to see when is the RRT schedule date. Okay, because all construction work pass holders are required to attend RRT. Okay, the only exception is for those working in the office. So for those exceptions, you can come to BCA's website to fill out the form for them to be exempted from RRT. Okay, that said, SCPRs who are entering the worksite will also have to attend the RRT once every 14 days. Okay, so this is on the part of the RRT. Okay, for the ART, currently we are undergoing a piloting implementation stage. We have about 30 projects on board, and we are encouraging more to come. We are also holding a series of seminars. The next one coming up is this Friday. Keep a lookout for it on the 18th, and next Monday in Mandarin. We would like in this pilot to have most of the project sites on board to understand how to plan for ART, how to order test kits, and how to upload test results. Basically, these are the few things that you will quickly learn during the pilot. The test kits are free. Okay, BCA will order for you once you put in an order to us to MOH to deliver to your worksite. So for this to be on board, you just need to identify a few workers whom you think will be competent enough to guide the supervised self-swap of our employees. And this course is offered by BCA Academy. We are running the course every day, so you can apply for the course to prepare for the ART pilot implementation. Okay, but most importantly, before you come to us, get your GPE or the project owner's concurrence for you to join the pilot. Right? We can address your queries if you join us in the webinar later on Friday. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Leighton. Just one follow-up question. For those sites that actually enroll on these ART pilots, do they still need to have the people entering the worksite enroll on RRT?
Yes, definitely. Because like I shared earlier, the RRT is a requirement, a basic requirement. So this ART is on top of the RRT requirement. So maybe just, I think you all have seen the slides that Shrin shared. We are doing it on the day 3, day 7, and day 11 of the RRT cycle to have the person entering your worksite undergo the supervised ART. All right. So this is to add the surveillance to ensure that whoever enters your worksite do not bring with them incubating virus in between the 14-day RRT cycle. Darren, is that all right?
Yes, thanks, Leighton. While you're on the topic of this ART, there's another question also on, are there plans to make this ART mandatory for the worksites?
Okay, currently this is being reviewed. We are also looking at how ART implementation is rolling out. We hope to get as many people ready as possible should there be any situation that needs us to roll out quickly to make sure the community cases do not spill into our worksites. We can share more details later. Because this is still early stage, we only have about 30 projects on board, but we are getting quite a big response from the last round. Since the last round, we briefed the industry. So if you want to be on board, please let us know quickly. We will also process as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks, Leighton. So just to recap, RRT is the mandatory requirement. ART is a pilot that is an add-on on the RRT. So if employers have not signed up their workers for RRT, they should do so through the SRS. And now for this moment, if they want to sign up for the pilot ART, how should the builders contact BCA? Should they join the webinars that will be upcoming later part of this month?
Yes, we have sent out invitations, so you can check whether you have received such invitation. If you are still interested, you let us know through our BCA e-feedback. We can send you once you have indicated there that you're interested to attend this. Just to share, following our earlier session of webinar, we will be posting the information on our website. In the website, you will be having the details on how to enroll, apply, and what are the requirements to look out for.
Okay. Thank you, Leighton.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, I will want to look at some questions relating to entry to site. I think there were some questions on how should the builders scan the tokens or the app. How would they see that the check-in is done properly? I believe there was a change in the way that the TT check-in is being done on WorkSites. So I'd like to call on Puni to maybe share with us. Puni?
Yeah, hi, Aaron. Thanks for the question and thanks for the info. I think my colleague Yong Xian has shared some of this before in the slides. Mainly what we need to know, the contractors need to know, is that when they use the safe entry app, they call it business app, which is like a desktop kind of scenario or mobile app. When the worker enters, he had to tap on this app to use the TT token or the TT app. And when they do that, straight away they'll be shown whether the SS code is also aligned to it. So they'll be shown whether it is red or green. So if the worker is on a red kind of SS code, the security who's checking on this make sure that the person does not enter the site and look at it further reasons as to why his SS is red. It could be due to RRT, or it could be due to other reasons. Maybe he has COVID positive cases, close contacts and all this, etc. This could be the reasons for that. So previously we've been using QR code to do the scanning and all that, and the SS code was checked through the SG Work Pass. So there was a separate kind of a scenario. Now this has been integrated together with the Safe Entry TT token app and everything. So it is much easier now for our guys to check in, but nevertheless, they can still use the SG Work Pass to verify the reasons as to why the SS code is red. So sometimes we see that at the site, the security do check this both, and at that time when they check, they forget to do the safe entry. So we will urge the security guard to make sure that while they check the SG Work Pass, they should still put in the safe entry. That will record the person entering into the site. The second thing is that the QR code, like what my colleague has mentioned, is no more in place. So please do not use QR code to scan the worker in, because it's not integrated together with the SS code. This has been quite clear. We even answered this question in the forum, and I hope that the contractor is clear. And my guys, when they go down to site, they do educate our fellow contract colleagues on this also. So I hope that is quite clear on that process. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, okay. So just to summarize, Puni, that means what the builders need to do now is really to update the app on their mobile devices, right? Previously, they were using the scanning of the ID on the mobile device. So now once they update to the latest version of the app can now scan the TT tokens and the TT app from the people who are entering the worksite directly. And for workers who are scanning their app or their token on the device, it will show the access code color as well. Is that correct?
Right, yes, correct, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that answers most of the queries out there. We will also capture this as a Q&A to be sent out later.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that safe entry is a very critical gateway. So I will urge the contractors and security who are checking this to take this seriously, because any breach of these things is taken quite seriously on our site. So safe entry is the important part of entry into the site, and that actually traces back to the contact of any COVID positive cases in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Puni. Let me see what other questions there are coming up. Yes, there's one question on vaccinations and RRT. Maybe I would like to call Lei Tuan to clarify. If the workers or the people entering the worksite have already been vaccinated, do they still need to undergo RRT and ART?
Okay, yeah, Darren, just to share, right, currently, if you read all the cases in MOH press release, those vaccinated have actually been reinfected with COVID. So we are taking a very careful approach to this. So currently, based on the new strains that we are seeing, the MOH guidelines given to us is whoever has been vaccinated should continue to be on the 14-day RRT cycle. Okay.
Thanks, Lei Tuan. So I hope that clarifies. if you are vaccinated, you still need to do RRT. And if the worksite has ART piloted, you also need to do ART. Okay, maybe now let me move on to some question on the COTMA provisions. This is from Mr. Shi Mo Leong. So I'd like to direct this to our colleague Man Hon. The question is there any new standard clauses for the private construction sector, especially for those auto-granted EOT for private sector under this pandemic period? We are facing a lot of unfair treatment from the project leader during the discussion over EOT, and straightforward, they sent us the delay cert during this pandemic period, no room for discussion. Man Hon, would you like to clarify?
Hi. Okay. For private sector project, we understand that there are different types of contract. I mean, the most commonly used contract is the SIA condition of contracts and also the WEDAS DNB contracts. So for these two contracts, actually same as the current public sector standard condition of contracts, PSS COC. The current contracts are not so particular geared towards for this pandemic situation. So this pandemic situation basically really goes beyond the control of every party involved. So what we are what we are working on is like what our colleagues Hui Xian shared earlier. We have formed a work group comprising of the government agencies and associations such as SCAL, WEDAS, and also SIA to look at this standard form of contract, how we can actually add in provision to allow for assessment of EOT and also loss and expenses clause provision related to additional costs incurred due to pandemics. So these are work in progress. If there are further details, we will be sharing with the industry when ready.
Thanks, Man Hon. I see a follow-up question on the use of the app for entry to the work sites. So I'd like to call on Puni to clarify. Instead of the mobile app, can the construction sites actually use the safe entry gateway box that's provided by SNDGO for check-ins to the work site? Puni?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, currently, unfortunately, the gateway box is not integrated with the access code. So that's the reason that we cannot use the gateway box. So we will still urge the contractors to use the entry app and their mobile business app to scan first, while GovTech is still working on it to integrate this access code into the gateway box that is used in other places like shopping centers and all that. Thanks.
Thanks, Puni. Okay, I see a lot of questions on manpower issues. As we do not have an MOM rep, we will take all these questions back and we will provide a written answer after the webinar. So for this session, we would like to focus more on the requirements on keeping the work sites safe, as well as the ART requirements. So there are a lot of questions on the ART pilot program. I believe Lei Tuan earlier has shared that if the builders are interested, they can contact us through our website, or alternatively, they can also sign up for the webinars that will be going out in the next couple of weeks for more information on how to get on board on this. So we shall not take the details here. I think most of the burning questions have been answered. So perhaps I would like to go back to Yigming and Nelson. Do you have any advice for our colleagues in the industry, how they can further better manage their workers and their work sites as a closing remark? Yigming?
My advice is that I think the COVID situation is still very fluid. We have to continue to stay vigilant because we cannot allow the COVID to spread back to our construction site or dormitory. I think that if your site or the dormitory is locked down, the situation will become worse. Yes, SMM actually is also disruptive to our work site. It affects some of our productivity, but I think it is necessary to stay vigilant and adhere to all these SMM measures. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Yip-Ming. Nelson, any closing remarks?
Yes, I think I concur with all the panelists here. I think we have to abide by the SMM and strictly adhere to the proper procedures, okay, and do implement it carefully, okay. But at the same time, I will encourage companies to join associations so that we can address their issues faster and up to date, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Nelson. So indeed, we need all of your cooperation and all of your vigilance to keep our worksite safe. So that includes adhering to the RRT, ART requirements, as well as making sure the SMM requirements on site are met, and making sure that the workers are checked in properly through the TT app before they enter the worksite. So with this, I would like to call the Q&A panel to a close, and I'll hand it back to Christina to close the session. Christina, please.
Thank you, moderator and panelists, for sharing your insights with the industry. To participants, if you have not subscribed to BCA's Telegram channel, you may do so by scanning the QR code on this slide. With the subscription, you will receive the latest updates on the built environment sector. BCA will be organizing more webinars on sustaining a COVID-safe built environment. Do keep a lookout for the email invitations. We would like to announce the commencement of the course Antigen Rapid Test or ART Swabbing and Supervision for Built Environment. This course will allow attendees to perform the role of a swabber and implement and supervise ART operations at work sites. To find out more and to sign up for the course, please scan the QR code shown on the screen. We have come to the end of today's program. After exiting this webinar, you will be directed to access a short feedback survey. Once completed, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Thank you for your participation and for making this webinar a success.